Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning we would like to look at the Mikra for the wedding feast. The Mikra. Now, what do I mean by the Mikra? I mean that we have come to rehearse for the wedding feast that we are told about in Matthew chapter 22. So I would like to look at it through the prism of Moses and his experience with Yisrael. Now, if we consider Israel as an orchestra, Moses would have been the first violin, and his brother Aaron would have been the second violin. He's the lead, Moses is, and typically the first violin is the best violinist in the orchestra. And you can understand why the book of Numbers in chapter 12 and verse 3 says, "Now the man Moshe, he was the meekest man on the face of the earth." So he's worthy to be that first violin. And in an orchestra, the second violin plays a supporting role. That's what he does. Rhythmically. Whereas the first violin plays the melody. And so we just would like to look at chapter 32 of Shemot, that's the book of Exodus, to introduce the point that we would like to expound upon later on. Come with me to chapter 32. And the word says, "And when the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, 'Arise, make us mighty ones who go before us, for this Moshe, the man who brought us up out of the land of Mitzrayim,'" that's Egypt, "we do not know what has become of him." They are saying that this first violin, we don't know where he is. The harmony is gone. Now you would think the second violinist, Aaron, who is there to play a supporting role, would put a search party together and try and find where his brother had gone. But as you read the passage, you get a feel of the simultaneous occurrences. Moses, the amanuensis, in that he's a secretary, he's taken dictation from Yahweh up in the mountain. And the people down in the valley, they are reveling. That's what's happening at the same time. Let's read on. And Aaron said to them, take off the golden earrings which are on the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron, and he took this from their hand, and he formed it into an engraving tool and made a molded calf. And they said, this is your mighty one, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Did you get that? Did you get the confusion here? A few minutes ago, as we read, they said it was Moses who brought them out. Now they say it's a golden calf. And I don't want you to miss the message here. We understand that Passover was on the 15th day of the month. Well, Passover is on the 14th day of the month, but unleavened bread is on the 15th day of the month. That's a Sabbath, an annual Sabbath. And the people left. As we read in Exodus chapter 19, we see that they get to Mount Sinai round about the 45th, 46th day of the month, the third month. And obviously, Pentecost is 50 days after Passover, the Feast of Weeks. So the point I'm making here, it's only a few weeks. And they had forgotten who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They had forgotten. And so we want to discuss this morning the thankfulness and gratitude of Israel. Oh, yes. Ingratitude of Israel as a people. You see, like peacocks, many of us are roosting high in the leafy hills of suburbia, where our iridescent plume, like that peacock, I mean our pride, can be seen by others. And so we leave a trail of opulence, independence, and insolence, framed by an attitude of ingratitude. 6 weeks it was that these people left Egypt. And they remember the plagues in Egypt. They remember that they were in Goshen and nothing happened to them, but with all of Pharaoh's people, it was a tragedy for them. When there was darkness in Egypt, there was light where they were staying, and now they said that it was a golden calf that had brought them out. How ungrateful people have become. When we were sick, we promised Yah we would be in the assembly. We would come to church. And we would do all the things that he requires from us. But now we're okay. When we couldn't get through that exam, and we prayed, and we asked him to take us through, he took us through. 6 weeks. When we had problems in our relationship and we asked him, he came forth for us. But now they're asking, where is that man Moshe? Where is he? Another thing we learn is that when you put your trust in a man, you're in trouble. When you put your all in a preacher, in a pastor, in an elder, because had their faith been strong, it would have been on Yah. But their faith was not on Yah. It was in a man. And so they want now a second leader. They want the second violin because the first violin is not there. But just think, the man, Moses, is getting instructions. He's taking dictation from the Creator to disseminate that information to the people, and they were impatient with the process. And so this morning, we want to look at the recrudescence of that kind of attitude among Yah's people. We want to look at that. So come with me to the book of Leviticus so that we can expound upon the subject today. Leviticus chapter 23. And the word says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as set apart gathering, my appointed times are these. 6 days, work is done. I want to remind you that it is Yahweh who is speaking here. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, a set apart gathering. You do no work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings. You know, often I hear people say, well, the Sabbath is for the Jews. The word says the Sabbath is for Yah. It says, these days are mine. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, set apart gathering, which you are to proclaim at the appointed times. Now, in the King James, often we read the word feast, but it has nothing to do with food. Nothing to do with food. The word wants us to know that the word feast means appointment. So Yah, from the very history of the morning of creation, made some appointments for his people. The seventh-day Sabbath is one of them. It's not the only one. The feast days are also appointments, annual appointments, which he expects all who is in covenant with him are to be there. I want you to understand where I'm going with this. So the word feast in Hebrew is moed. Moed, meaning appointed time. Yah is saying, I am here making appointments for my people, Israel. That's the people who are in covenant with me. I have an agreement with them that they will meet me on the Shabbat weekly and on the annual Shabbats. We talk about Passover, we're talking about Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, or Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. He said, I want to meet with all who are in covenant with me. These are appointments. And he made these appointments long before there ever was a Jew. We mustn't miss that. So when I hear you say that your church don't believe that, and your pastor doesn't teach that, what is it you're saying? The word of Yah says that it must be kept. It must be kept. But the church says, we won't keep it. We will not keep it. Let me remind you, come with me to the book of Exodus, chapter 19. These people, very same people we're discussing this morning, Israel. And when I speak of Israel, I don't want you to think I am dealing with a geographical Israel. If you are in Yeshua, then are you Abraham's seed, and only then are you at liberty to call yourself Yisrael. Remember that. Israel is not a place as it is. The land of Israel is real. We know that. But the people that will inherit it ultimately are the people who have accepted Yeshua. You cannot say that you don't believe in Yeshua and expect to have a place reserved in the kingdom. That's foolishness. So in the 19th portion of Shemot, it says, in the third new moon, that's the third month after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, on the day they came to the wilderness of Sinai, for they set out from Rephidim and had come to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. So Yisrael camped there before the mountain. And Moshe went up to Elohim, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, this is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and declare to the children of Yisrael, you have seen what I did to Mitzrayim, and how I bore you in eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all peoples, for all the earth is mine. Don't miss the point here. Yah is here addressing a mixed multitude of people, some of which are Israelites by way of their relationship with Joseph. Some were not. It was mixed. But he's addressing them and he's speaking morality to them. They're now out of slavery, and he's telling them how they should live. He's building a kingdom here. He said, if they obey me. So you get the point that being in covenant with Yeshua is about obedience. So the case about faith in Yeshua is one that cannot be justly made by those who are insular members of the parochial wing of the state church. You can't do that. We should all agree that faith is a belief expressed through obedience to Yahweh. We must understand that. It determines our citizenship and our identity in the kingdom of heaven. Obedience. Therein, the denominations, though they be plural in composition, are one in faith. The orthodoxy of which the apostles preached and they lived. That's why they remained steadfast in the apostles' doctrines. So when I hear someone say, I'm a Lutheran, premise their faith, and this German reformer, however good he might have been. When he departs, like Moses went up into the mountain, the people will find another leader. Another will tell me, no, I'm not a Lutheran, but I'm a Pentecostal. And I would say, but how is it that you don't keep the Feast of Pentecost? Another will say, I'm none of those. I'm a C of E. I'm the Church of England, a state church. And I would say, did you know how that church was established? On the family values of Henry VIII, who wanted a divorce. And the Pope would not give one to him, so he established the Church of England. So whatever your culture, your ethos, your heritage, it matters not, because all that is transcended when you come into Yeshua. And if you are a Methodist, and so you esteem John Wesley, the question is still the same. What is your method other than Yeshua? So the word is clear that feast means moed, appointments. Yahweh has made appointments, and he has us in covenant, and we must obey him. We must obey him. And so he said, these are signs. The word, the Hebrew word for signs there is oath, which means signal. He says, I'm going to use the sun, the moon, and the stars. These are a signal. You need to understand them. And you will recall in Matthew chapter 2, won't you? When the wise men came from Babylon and they said, we have seen the star. We have seen the sign that the king is born. And we're here to worship him. Oh, yes. And so we need to understand these things. And he said all these days, they are what? Convocations. So the Hebrew word for convocation is what? It's rehearsal. He said, you must rehearse on the Sabbath. You must rehearse throughout the year for the main event. So today is a rehearsal. When you keep the Sabbath, you are rehearsing for the millennium Sabbath. And so understand that. If you are a member of an orchestra and you have a great event coming up on a particular day, and you're asked to come to rehearsal and you didn't turn up, you couldn't reasonably expect to play the first violin on the day the event is taking place because you did not attend the rehearsal. Now, this is so serious that it's worth us dwelling a little bit more. Because to whom do I speak this morning? To whom do I speak? Yah says, I've set appointments for my people to have convocation, to rehearse my son's first and second coming. The church says, he's fulfilled them. And he hasn't come back yet. That's what they say. So we have a problem. We do have a problem. Because the church is denominational are not keeping them. So my question is, how can they reasonably expect to be in the choir when he comes? Let's reason. And let me remind you what he says about them. Come with me to Matthew and the 22nd portion of Matthew. And Yahweh responded and spoke to them again by parables and said, notice, he speaks to who in parables? His disciples. It is not for others to understand, but he speaks, according to Matthew chapter 13, he speaks to us in parables. So it is for us to understand the parables. So he says, Matthew is here writing. Remember, Matthew was a former tax collector. He was in cahoots with the Romans, but now he's converted and he's writing. He says, the reign, the kingdom of heavens is like a man, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son. Did you hear that? He says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man, a king, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, but they would not come. You see who he's talking about? He said, these appointments, these rehearsals that I've made, it's for all the people, whatever church you say you belong to come and rehearse on the Shabbat and also on the annual Sabbath, but they said, we will not come. He's talking to the very contemporary churches today. That's you. They say, we will not come. He sent his servants to call. That's exactly what I'm doing today. The called out one. I'm calling you. Come to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants saying, say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and the fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast. Lutheran, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, Church of England, come. They said, we're not coming because Constantine says these things are done away with. That's you. That's your photograph. In fact, that's your mugshot. A reduction to word of the churches in Matthew 22. That's what it is. Remember, there's a Passover coming up in a few weeks. And I want to drag your memory all the way back to the motherland, Africa. Sometimes we say Egypt so often we forget that it's in North Africa. So let me remind you that it was Africa that supported Israel. You remember when Joseph went down, don't you? And his father came down with the rest of the family. They were honored guests of Pharaoh. They were. When there was a famine. And Pharaoh treated them well because of Joseph. But then came a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. and all this atrocities started to blossom. But I want to stay a little in Matthew 22 because I think the churches should understand this. They ought to know this. They need to know that this is not abstractly being stated. It's about them. They're all invited to keep the feast days and to keep the Shabbat, but they say we will not come. Verse 5, but they disregarded it and went their way, this one to his field, that one to his trade. Shall I read it another way? But they disregarded it and went to their Lutheran church, to their Baptist church, to their Seventh-day Adventist church, to their Episcopalian church, and to their Church of England church. That's in the, I'm reading this from another version. Are you with me? This is the EMV version. If you probably wouldn't get this version in the store because it is Elder Mattock's version. And so the word is letting you know that all these churches were called to keep the appointments with Yah. But they said, we will go to our own place. Verse 6, and the rest, having seized his servant, insulted and killed him. But when Yeshua heard, he was wroth and sent out his soldiers, destroy those murderers. Who? These are church people. Well, who killed Yeshua? I know the Romans impaled him, but who handed him over? Church people. So the word here says, those murderers, and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servant, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Are you with me? The wedding feast in a few weeks, and the churches are not ready. In fact, they said they will not come. That's what they say. Therefore, go into the streets, corners. Are you with me? Not in the churches anymore, because as we read some weeks ago, and it has become a prominent text among us, Revelation chapter 18 and verse 23, the light has gone out in Laodicea. Go to the street corners, not in the churches now, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding feast. Let me say that another way. The rehearsals of the Sabbath and of the feast days is for the wedding supper. We come to rehearse each week and each annual Sabbath for this wedding supper. And if you don't do it, you will not come in. It's in the word. It's in the word. So join me at verse 11 to consolidate the point. And when the sovereign came in to view the guest, he saw there a man who had not put on the wedding garment. Did you? He was not at the rehearsal. He didn't hear what clothes to wear. He wasn't there. He did not turn. This man here who doesn't have the wedding garment, he is representative of those who did not turn up to the rehearsal. And Yeshua said, the king's son said to him, friend. Of course he's a friend. That's why you invite your friend to a wedding. How did you come in here not having a wedded garment? And the man was speechless. How dare you come to join my orchestra where we want violins and you bring a bamboo guitar? How come? How come? How impudent. How insolent. How could you? The king has invited you to his royal banquet, and you did not even bother to rehearse. How is it? Simply because your church, so-called, perhaps you had not read Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 23. There's one general assembly. One. And all these denominations collectively, they are members of that one assembly, headquartered in heaven. If you're not a member of that, then you're not a member of the kingdom. It's clear. And you keep saying, you keep replicating the same foolishness that these are for the Jews. Come with me to Bereshit chapter 1 in verse 14. The word says, and Yah said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for what? Signs. Remember I said earlier, the word for in Hebrew for sign is oath. And for seasons. Are you with me? So it doesn't mean spring, summer, autumn, or winter. It means they are for the appointment. These luminaries, they will tell you when it is that we're going to have the feast days. That's what he's saying. And this was way back in Genesis chapter 1. Before there was ever a Jew. Abraham wasn't born. Noah wasn't born. Noah is the 8th generation. Enoch wasn't born. And you telling me this is for Jews? Wow. You're doing sloppy scholarship. And so the word is clear. Come with me to Deuteronomy 16 and verse 16. 3 times a year shall all the males appear before Yah, thy Elohim, in place, which ye shall choose in the feasts of matzah, unleavened bread, and in the feast of Shavuot, feast of weeks, that's Pentecost, and in the feast of Sukkot, that's tabernacle, and they shall appear before Yah. So everybody is called. Now, you know, it is interesting how Yah does things, because you remember in Matthew chapter, not Matthew, in Luke chapter 22, on the evening of the 13th of Nisan or Habib, when Yeshua met with his disciples and he took bread and wine and he washed the disciples' feet. You remember that? And the church has turned that into communion. They call it communion. But that's the evening of Passover, you remember. And it says after they had finished everything and Judas was poised to betray him, they walked out and sang a song and walked across the Kidron Valley and into the Garden of Gethsemane. The song of that song is in Psalm 118, where we sing the chorus, bind what? You know the song? The sacrifice of praise. We bring the sacrifice of praise. So the point I really want to make with that in Psalm is that several years before his son came, he decided that David would compose the songs that would sing at his burial. Isn't that interesting? And so we call that the Alal. So Psalm 113 to Psalm 118, those are the songs that they sing. These are all songs. These are all songs. And so we have got to understand that all of us are called to keep the feast. Because if you don't keep the feast, you're really demonstrating that you're not in covenant. So you better come with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And we're going to dilate upon verse 7 and 8. Because I hear people very often say, these feast days are done away with. They are for the Jews. We have already established who the Jews are. According to Galatians 3:29, if you be in Abraham, if you be in Yeshua, you are in Abraham, and then Abraham is your father. So I know there are three prominent religions, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, who claim Abraham as their father. And then I listened to some of them who said, we don't believe in the Messiah. You see the contradiction? So you don't believe in the Messiah, but you're keeping his feast? Come on. Again, we are exposed to sloppy scholarship. And moreover, some say he hasn't yet come. And yet another group said he came and he fulfilled them. Then I hear the Messiah himself now speak. He said, think not, don't even conceive the thought that I had come to destroy what the prophets wrote. And so let me read 1 Corinthians chapter 5, 7 and 8. Purge out, therefore, the old leaven. You remember, they used to kill the lamb on the 14th day. That's why Yeshua was crucified on the 14th day. He says, purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that he may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Messiah, for who? Messiah, our Passover. Did you get that? The Messiah is your Passover. Is sanctified, is sacrificed for us. Therefore, this is the Apostle Paul speaking. He said, let us keep the feast. Let us keep the appointed times. I want to remind you that this is New Testament. And Paul here is saying, let us keep the appointed time, the feast day, not with the old leaven. You don't have to do what you used to do before with the lamb, because Yeshua is the ultimate lamb. Neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. You say you have truth, but you don't do this? No. No. You just ostentate. And so the apostle is saying that we should keep the feast days, the appointed times that Yah established. Now, come with me to the book of Acts, because I just want to continue this point regarding Yeshua ascension. And we're going to stay in chapter 1. The word says that Yeshua is about to ascend. This is the 40th day after his ascension, after his crucifixion. He says in verse 4, well, let's read verse 3. To whom he also presented himself alive after his suffering by many infallible proofs, being seen to them for 40 days. So after he was resurrected, he stayed on the earth for 40 days and showed himself to many people. But he knew that after Passover, you count the Omer for 50 days. And 50 days is the Feast of Pentecost. He's leaving, remember, but he still wants his disciples to keep the feast. I'm reading it for your benefit. Let's read it again, verse 3. To whom he also presented himself alive after his suffering by many infallible proofs, being seen by them for 40 days, speaking concerning the reign of Elohim, and meeting with them, and what? And meeting with them, his disciples, his Talmudim, he commanded, he did what? Let me say that again. He commanded them not to leave Jerusalem, but to wait for the promise of the Father, which you have heard from me. Don't leave Jerusalem. The Ruach, the Holy Spirit, is coming to Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost. When you come to keep the feast of Pentecost, the Ruach will be there. He's leaving, but he's saying, don't forget to keep the annual Sabbath. Because Yohanan truly immersed in water, but you shall be immersed in the set-apart Spirit, and not many days from now. And when you read in Acts chapter 2, he said, and when the day of the festival of Shavuot had come, they were all in one place and one mind. Did you get that? You cannot say that about the contemporary churches. One, they're not in the same place, psychologically or otherwise, theologically, and certainly not economically. And they are not of the same mind. One say, I keep this day, and another says, I keep that day. He says, before you even have a church, I appointed these days for you. And he says that I've sent people out to invite you, and you did not come. You know, we here, we live in contiguous America, meaning that contiguous America has 48 states. If you include Alaska and Hawaii, then you get the 50. It's interesting how Hawaii is way over there on the west, and Alaska is kind of nowhere, but there are states of America. And I would like to say that the world really is an extension of America in terms of the influence that America has on the world. The point I'm making, though, is simply this, that we have different time zones. We here in Florida, we're on the Eastern. Different time zone. I say that to say this, that Yah has a different time zone too. And that's why we meet on these days that we meet, because Yah's time zone is not like Gregorian, it's not like Constantine. And so, you know, if you were living on the border of two time zones, you would need two clocks. Because you might be living in one time zone and you work in another time zone. Are you with me? So you're looking at April the 14th, and that's all you see. And Yah wants you to know that's Passover. The churches are failing because they operate from another time zone. They are not in the contiguous heaven. They have built themselves as others, another state. Are you with me? These 50 states, when the federal government passes a law, it has implication and application to all of them. You cannot say you belong to the kingdom of heaven, and when he asks for you to meet with him, you says no. You can't do that. You're behaving like a satellite that will soon burn out. You can't say, I'll do my own thing. The king's word is law, not your conference. Not your conference. Not your institution. No, you can't do that. And so you're about ready now to join me in Yohanan chapter 12. Yohanan chapter 12. Accordingly, Yeshua, 6 days before the Pesach, or Pesach, that's Passover, came to where? Bethania, where Eleazar, that's Lazarus in your Bible, was, who had died, whom he raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there. And Martha served, and Eleazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. Now, as I think of this, Yeshua in this meeting is going to be prepared for his death. But think, Yeshua came into the earth in the 4th millennium. There's 4,000 years between Adam and Yeshua, 4,000 years. Because what? You have to go back to Genesis 1 to understand the point I'm making, that the sun was made on the 4th day. So the light came into the world in the 4th millennium, because you remember what 2 Peter 3 and verse 8 said, one terrestrial day is equal to 1,000 celestial years. So you could say he came in when? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's why he was crucified on that day. Get what I'm saying? Not on Friday. And so we just want to settle that here. That's why we've turned to Yohanan, John chapter 12. The word says, so they made him supper there, and Martha served while Eleazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. Now, I sometimes hear people say, well, no one has ever come back from the dead and say what it's like. Clearly, if I had Lazarus' phone number, I'd give it to them to speak with him. Then Miriam, in your Bible, it says Mary took a pound of costly perfume of nard, anointed the feet of Yeshua, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Come with me to verse 12. On the next day, a great crowd who had come to the festival, when they heard that Yeshua was coming to Jerusalem, took the branches of palm trees and went out to meet him and were crying out, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of... Yeah, so we know that this is the next day, because the word here in verse 1 said he came to Bethany 6 days before. So if the next day was the day that they were waving these palm branches, and we call that today Palm Sunday, then the previous day must have been the Sabbath. So you count from that day 6 days forward, and you come to Thursday, which is the unleavened bread. So the day before the unleavened bread is what the Bible calls the day of preparation. That's a Wednesday. Yeshua was crucified on Wednesday, not Friday. So those who are called in Matthew 22, they are misleading, whether unwittingly or not, the people telling him he was crucified on Friday. Tell me how you get 72 hours from Friday to early Sunday morning. And so they fudge this. Watch what they do. They tell you, you know what? Any part of a Jewish day is still a day. Where did Jews get days from? In Genesis 1, it says, and the evening and the morning are the first day, evening and the morning the second day, evening and the morning were the third day, long before there was a Jew. Cut that out, because it is not biblical at all. Not so. And so he came in the 4th millennium, and he was crucified on the 4th day. But watch something else. The Hebrew people, they had to get the lamb 4 days before, on the 10th day, to examine the lamb, to make sure that the lamb had no blemish. Are you with me? Because that year of crucifixion, he was the lamb, but they didn't know this. So when he came to Bethany and they arrested him and they took him to Pilate and they took him to Herod, they were just examining him. That's the lamb. And you heard what they said. The Pilate said, I see no fault in him. What Pilate is really saying, there is no blemish in him. And the church reads this. The church meditates on this. And the church flips the script and says, we won't keep Passover, but we will keep Easter. We will keep the Lord's Supper. Yah said clearly, I desire to drink this cup, but I will not drink this cup until what? The kingdom made new. Did you get that? He said that in Luke 22. I desire to drink this cup, but not until the kingdom made new. What does that tell you about Passover? It takes us back to Matthew 22. He will drink that cup at the banquet when you won't be there because you haven't been to rehearsal. We've got to understand these things and question our leaders. In Exodus chapter 12 and verse 15, he said, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your house. For whatsoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. But I don't want you to miss the point either, that you think that the whole idea is about to take out the baking soda and all the things that have yeast out of your house. That's one thing. But that's not what he's talking about. Paul said, don't you know that you are the temple of Yah? So don't come to Passover because you've cleansed your house. Make sure you've cleansed your house. Get the sins out of your life before you come. That's what he's saying, isn't it? Do you not know that you are the temple of Yah and that the Spirit of Yah dwells in you? If anyone defiles the temple of Yah, Yah will destroy him, for the temple of Yah is holy. Which temple are you? So a lot of people, some calling themselves Jews, cleanse their houses, taking all the yeast out, but the real house is not cleansed. He said, you are the unleavened bread. And so Peter wants us to know, ye also, as lively stones, are built up on a spiritual house. Remember, a week ago we talked about the building and the disciples were the foundation. Well, Peter here is saying in 1 Peter 2:5, ye also are lively stones, are built up a spiritual house and holy priesthood to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Yah by Yeshua, the Messiah. Get that? So the next time you hear anyone foolishly talk about these belong to Jewish people or any other group of people, just let them know that it is not that way at all. So let's go back to Exodus chapter 32, because it's worthy of replication. It says the people sinned. And while they are sinning and Yah is about to destroy them, Moses is pleading for them. The very same man that they despise. And I wonder, how can you despise a religion and hope that religion or that faith can save you? I shouldn't say religion, because religion is man-made. Faith. And there's only one. When you come and you ask someone, well, what faith do you belong to? The answer should be, is there another except Yeshua? How many faiths are there? Oh, I'm from the Baha'i faith, some say. I'm that faith. Oh, yes. No. One faith, one love, one destiny. And I'm not talking about, when I talk about one love, the troubadour from Trenchtown. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Yeshua. One love. So the word says, Yah now is about to destroy them. Because the second violin was playing disharmony to the people. Because the first violin, Moses, was practicing from the conductor himself. And simultaneously, these things are juxtaposing. And Yah heard it and told Moses, go down to your people. Because Yah recognized if they were his people, they would be obedient to him. But by that time, they sold themselves out to a calf, golden. The earrings and the golds that they used to make the calf, Yah told them it was for the temple. You didn't hear me. I said the jewels that they brought from Egypt was to build the tabernacle. The tithes and offering, the money that Yah has blessed you with to use to build up his ministry for the kingdom, you use it to buy foolishness. So, Yah is about to destroy them. They're angry with Moses. But it goes to show that that which Yah puts in Moses, Aaron did not have it in the same measure. What Yah puts in the leader, he doesn't always give it to the congregation. It's a gift of endowment. And even if you create your own church and you don't have it, you can't do it. It's not the colleges you go to. It's not the double masters and the PhD that you hear people boast about. The only thing we need boast about is our weaknesses, and we bring them to Yeshua because in our weaknesses, he makes us strong. He takes ordinary people like you and I and makes us extraordinary. Each of us. But then, only 6 weeks, we're now liberated. We have a good job. We have a nice house, double car garage. And we moved from downtown. We're living in Constant Spring. We're living in upstate. We're living in the suburbs, the leafy suburb. And so we have forgotten, just like Israel, we forget where we're coming from. And you say to someone, will you come and keep the Sabbath with us? And the person you're talking to, he, like you, has borrowed breath. But listen to him. Oh, I'm too busy tomorrow. You're too busy to serve. Yeah, you're really too busy, are you not? Oh, I have another appointment. You mean Yah made this one in Genesis, and you just had one in 2024, and the one you have in 24 is more important than the one in Genesis. The word says, and he came and he saw a man who did not come to the rehearsal. A man who did not have the wedding garment on. Friend, what are you doing with wranglers at my wedding? Where is the royal robe that I provided for you? And he summoned the ushers. Take him out. Take him out. And the word says, in that day, when Isaac, Jacob, Abraham are sitting there, and those who are faithful to him are there eating at the banquet, watch the simultaneous occurrence. They'll be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth because those who were called said, we will not come. Let's close on this. Let's go back to our text in Revelation. It is a famous text of ours. That's the book of Azon, and we're going to come to Revelation 18. Revelation 18. Now, having read Revelation chapter 14, we see three angels there with the three angels' messages. And the first thing they said in verse 6 is to fear Yah and give glory to him because the hour of his judgment has come. So you didn't take any notice of that. Because if you feared Yah, you'd be keeping the Sabbath. And if you feared Yah, you'd be keeping the feast day. So we know that you didn't obey that. Then another angel come and told you Babylon is fallen. Not physical Babylon, but spiritual Babylon. Mr. Babylon is fallen. Why? Because we read in Revelation 2 and 3 that Balaam is one of the teachers. And Jezebel is also another teacher teaching the people. Can you imagine that your professor is Balaam? And once you finish that semester, Jezebel then takes you over. And then by the time we realize, because you've ignored all these warnings, you see, you wonder why you were bitten by the bloodhound, don't you? It's simple. You didn't heed the warning of the guard dog. You heard the barking, but you did not listen to the warning. And so by the time we realize, you have the mark of the beast. But this angel is so fond of us. You know, come with me to chapter 18. It says, and after I saw another messenger come down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his esteem. You can't miss this. And he had to come with great light, but he's coming to a people who are in darkness. Are you with me? And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, what? Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. So Babylon's fall twice. Falls physically, and it falls mystery, spiritually. And has become the dwelling places of demons, a haunt of every unclean spirit, and a haunt of every unclean and hated bird. Now, if you were reading this with a veil over your eyes, you would not think that he's talking about Yah's people. Would you? You would be asking yourself, how could Yah's people find themselves in this kind of position? All you have to do is to read Daniel 8 and 9. Because the recrudescence of that is here again. It's a replication of it. So the angel recognized what is happening. He said, because all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring. Remember, this woman is a whore. She's a prostitute. She's a woman of the night. She lives in a red light district. Now, when you hear divine utterances describing something like that, surely that should get your attention. So it says, she committed whoring with the merchants of the earth, and she is rich. Watch the irony as we go. She's rich through the power of her riotous living. The word says she's prodigal. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. What does that tell you? It tells you that Yah knows that he has people in Mr. Babylon. And because this woman, this prostitute, she is the mother of all what? Whores. Now, it's hard to even bring oneself to think that this is talking about people who have been baptized and profess to be followers of Yeshua. If my people were called by my name, Yahweh, I didn't say Jesus, did I? If my people were called by my name, I didn't say Lord. You notice how deliberate I am. Because the angel says his name is Yeshua. Yah is salvation. So how did you smuggle in a J that was only founded 500 years ago, but you smuggle it back to the 4th millennium? I don't get it. You know it wasn't there. Careless translated. But the point is, come with me to verse 22 and 3. And the sound of the harpist. Did you hear me? Remember, I started and I spoke about an orchestra. If you see Israel and you consider it to be an orchestra, then Moses is the first violin. And Aaron is a second violin. This angel is telling you no harmony is playing anymore in the church. And the sound of the harpist and the musicians and the flutists and the trumpeters shall not be heard in you anymore at all. It's talking about the church. And you remember what happened in the times of COVID? The whole churches were closed down. You remember that, don't you? And no craftsman of any trade shall be found in you anymore at all. And the sound of the millstone shall not be heard in you anymore at all. And the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore at all. You see this angel, he came, and when he came with great light. The place lit up because he's coming to a people in darkness. And the voice of the bridegroom, we know that Yeshua is the bridegroom because if we be faithful, we're going to his banquet. Are you with me? The wedding took place in Daniel chapter 7. And it's by faith we went to the wedding, but physically we would participate in the banquet. That's when he got his kingdom. In Daniel 7, 9, and 10. And I beheld, said Daniel, and thrones were cast down, and the ancient of days did sit. And in verse 13 and 14, we are told that Yeshua was escorted. He's coming from the first apartment, and he's going to the second apartment. And he's the judge according to John 5:22. The Father judgeth no man, but he gives all judgment to his Son. So You're not going to hear the voice of the bridegroom and the bride. It said, you will not hear it. But you know what interests me? The loudness of the silence. Everything that happens in the world, the church is silent. But on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's loud. Are you with me? We don't care what's happening. The word says the church is a light on that hill, that incandescent light. But we're told by the angel the light has gone out. And the light of the Lamb shall not shine in you anymore at all. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you anymore at all. For all the merchants were the great ones on the earth. For your drug sorcery. Did you get that? The drug sorcery, the pharmacy. All the nations were led astray. They were deceived by these people, including the church. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and the set apart ones, and of all who were slain on the earth. So the next time you hear anyone talk about being the remnant, quote this to them, Revelation 12 and verse 17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman. That's the pure woman. The pure woman is in Revelation 12, and the whore is in Revelation 17. And so the dragon, Satan, is angry with this woman. Why? And he went to fight with the remnant of her seed, those who guarding the commandments of Elohim, including the feast days, the appointed days that Yah set, and possessing the weakness of Yeshua, Messiah. What is the testimony of Yeshua? The spirit of prophecy. To understand the prophecy and to be able to explain them to other people. He said, this woman had all of that. And so Satan was angry with this woman, but not the other women. That's why we read in Isaiah chapter 4, I should say, verse 1, that in that day, 7 women will take hold of one man. But they said, we will not wear his clothes. We will not eat his bread. We just want his name for convenience. Is that what you want? I think it not. So let us consider the coming feast and the fact that on the 1st of April will be the new moon, and on the 8th of April, I should say on the 8th of April is going to be the new moon and the solar eclipse in America, which puts an X across America, and 14 days after, it's the Passover. What if you should ignore this Passover and the angel of death did pass over your house as it did in Egypt? Where will you spend eternity, may I ask? Think on it. Your eternity might just depend on that. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.